to the Marketing for Learning podcast. Now, I promised you this episode would be myself and a very bronzed Ashley, but unfortunately she's still tanning herself, and you've just got me for today. I hope that's not too disappointing. I will see if the listener numbers suddenly drop after me saying that. But this is the final episode of Series 2 of the Marketing for Learning podcast. And what I want to do today is really bring together everything that we've spoken about in Series 2 and make it tangible for you. Make it something that you can walk away from listening to this episode and go, okay, I know what I need to do now. I know what's going to make the change in my function, and I know how to create real impact. We know what's broken. We know what doesn't work, and we've spoken about it at length. And we've had some really great advice on how to change that and what we should be focusing on instead. But in today's episode, I want to talk about the structure, the process, the step-by-steps. I asked a few of our guests what the one thing they'd recommend you do today would be. And essentially, this episode is that thing that you can do today. So let's get stuck in with the people impact loop. And step 1, employee and business insights. Really what employee and business insights mean is understanding your audience. And that's where every great L&D initiative should start, right? With the audience. If you hadn't gathered by now, I really don't want you to be thinking of your audiences as learners. I don't want you to be thinking, yep, okay, they're employees at my organisation. That's my audience, done. We need to be thinking of them more deeply. We need to be thinking about who they are as individuals, who they are as human beings. What do they care about? What motivates them? What's holding them back? If we don't know this, not only can we not market to them effectively, but how can we design for them effectively? How can we think about what's going to grab their attention? How can we know that the content we're developing actually means anything to them? We really need to stop assuming things about our audiences. You know what they say about assuming? It makes an ass out of you and me. So let's not do that. We need to get to know them deeply so that not only can we market to them better, but we can create content that they actually want to get involved with in the first place. Say Apple came out with a new phone that, I don't know, had no camera on it. I think a lot of their audience would be really unimpressed and uninterested in that. And that's why they've not done it, because they know their audience so well that actually having a pretty good camera in your pocket is part of the appeal of having an iPhone. That's the kind of level that we need to know our audiences at. We need to know what they care about. If they're not going to care about something, we need to know them well enough that we can persuade them to care. We spoke about this at length in episode 3 of this series. And I think it's really important to remember that as much as we see our audiences as learners and as essentially just a cog in our wheel, they're not. They're so much more than that. And nobody really identifies as being a learner other than us. People in L&D are the ones that say, I'm a lifelong learner. Maybe you get some entrepreneurs that say it as well. But the most of the population and most of your target audience will not identify as a learner. So make sure you're thinking beyond that. And the thing I'd love for you to do after listening to this podcast today is think about any research you have on your audience that digs deeper than whether they liked your learning or not, whether they're happy at work or not, that really answers them questions about what they care about. If you don't have that research, try to do it. That's your first action item on your to-do list. Do some research to understand who your audience really is. The next stage of the people impact loop is strategic business alignment. And this is something we overlook all too often in L&D. We're over here doing our learning thing, and the business is over here doing the business thing, and we don't try to marry the two up. But actually we are here firstly to serve the business, to make its people more impactful, more productive, all of that stuff, as well as serve our people. We have to start joining the dots. We have to start bridging the gap between, hey, learning's over here, and the rest of the business is over here doing something else. Not only does this make it a lot easier for you to win stakeholder buy-in, maybe get bigger budgets, show the impact that you're having on the business because you can actually relate it back to the things the business cares about. It makes it easier to get stakeholder buy-in, to get people to do the learning. Say you're talking to the head of sales and you're saying, oh, your team need to do this training. It's on data protection. Sorry, I know I always go for data protection. It's like my comfort learning topic. If you can't say why the sales team needing to know that information about data protection will actually impact their day-to-day role, the head of sales is not going to want to let their team do it. Any salesperson I've ever met, it's be on the phone, more selling, more selling, more selling. They don't want that time out. If it's sales skills, sure. But when it's something that's a little bit detached and they can't make that connection in their own brain, we've got to make it for them. And the only way we can do that is by being aligned with the business. We can't keep overlooking that. So your to-do item for this stage of the People Impact Loop is to go away and work out what your business strategy is. If you're in a huge organisation, you might even be able to find it online. But if not, ask your leader, ask their leader. Go and talk to the CEO if you're brave enough. Go and find out what matters to the business. There's probably slideshows on your intranet about the business goals for the next year, 3 years, 5 years. Dig into them and think, what role am I playing as L&D in helping the business achieve this goal? The next stage of the People Impact Loop is employee experience design. And you might be thinking, Hannah, what right have you got to be talking about employee experience design? We're the learning designers. Get back in your lane. But actually, there's a lot that L&D can learn from marketing and from UX design that I think is all too often overlooked. If you've got stages 1 and 2 of the People Impact Loop down, so you've got that audience understanding and that insight, and you've aligned to the business, you should be able to create an employee experience, a learning experience that knocks the socks off of your audience. Really blows them away because it's so personalised to them, the organisation, what they need. It makes sense. A lot of our learning content doesn't. A lot of our learning content feels like a tick box exercise, and then we wonder why L&D is seen as a cost centre. We want to stop that, and we're going to stop that today. In this series, I was lucky enough to be joined by Tom McDowell to talk about experience design. Tom is a phenomenal designer, and it made so much sense to get him on the podcast to talk about it. And his word of the episode was frictionless, making the entire experience frictionless for our audience. Our people don't want more content, even when they're saying there's not enough learning experiences. They just want it to be easy to find, easy to tap into, easy to do. We might love to have everything stuck on our LMS because it gives us some data that typically means nothing, but that's for later in the episode. They want it right there and then. Almost like Mr. Clippy. Remember back in the 90s, early noughties? Maybe not even the early noughties, maybe it really was just the 90s, where Mr. Clippy used to pop up every time you opened Microsoft Word or anything like that, saying, I can tell you're writing a letter. Do you need some help with that? They probably don't want it to be as annoying as Mr. Clippy. But that's the instantaneous in the flow of work that our people are looking for. It needs to be frictionless. So I want you to think about your learning experience, not content, not one course, the entire experience. What does that look like for your audience? Are you putting artificial barriers in the way that stops them wanting to get involved? That stops making it so easy for them to get involved? Are we deliberately making our people jump through hoops that they don't really need to jump through? Because if you are, no amount of market research or marketing will fix that. You can't put a plaster over a bad experience. If you want to make sure that you're getting the most from your L&D team and making the most impact possible, your experience design needs to be up to scratch. So my takeaway here is think about that and be really honest with yourself. Don't try to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Don't say, oh, but that's because our learning platform's really bad. It might be. It might be. and you might have to deal with that for the foreseeable because you're locked into a big long contract. But your audience doesn't care about that. They don't care about the logistics. They just want it to be easy. So what can we do to make that experience a lot better for them? And step 4 of the people impact loop is my favourite. Because I'm a marketer, of course I love employee engagement campaigns. But campaigns is the big word here. One email will never cut it. You'll never get the impact that your learning deserves if you've done everything we spoke about in the first 3 steps, if you just send one email one time and hope for the best. L&D need to start thinking with a campaign mindset. And that means continuous, multi-channel, multi-touch approaches to pushing out our content, to promoting it, to making people want to do it. Marketing is about answering that what's in it for me and hooking people in. Go back to that example I gave earlier with the iPhone. If they released an iPhone without a camera on it, they'd struggle to answer the what's in it for me because everybody would be like, well, I'd love my camera in my pocket, so how's that going to help me? But they can use that in their marketing because they do have a camera. I literally, when I got my most recent phone, was comparing, oh, well, actually, is this camera as good as the one I've currently got? It was a big thing for me. We need to know our audiences so well, and we need to have so much confidence in our employee experience design that we can say to them, this is for you, this is what you're going to get out of it, and you want to do this. It's not enough to just think, oh, it's learning, they have to do it. It's not enough to think, oh, their boss will tell them to, their manager will tell them to. And it's definitely not okay just to make things mandatory, to make them do it. We really need to start thinking about how we're going to hook our audiences in. I've not met an organisation for a very long time that doesn't have any content. But what I have met, more often than I care to admit, is organisations that have great content, really jam-packed learning platforms, and they're not communicating with their audiences. And then they're saying, well, why is my engagement so low? We need to actually bridge that gap. People aren't just going to stumble across your LMS or your learning platform. You need to tell them, you need to direct them, and we need to own that narrative. We can't just bat it over to internal comms and think they're going to make it a priority. It is L&D's job to own that narrative. So your takeaway from this, if you've ticked boxes 1 to 3, is to really think about your campaigns. How are you promoting your learning content? You're listening to the Marketing for Learning podcast. How much have you applied of everything you've listened to? Even if you don't have many channels, are you using the channels to their full potential? Remember, Ash said in that episode, we were talking about campaigns to avoid the void. Avoid just shouting into an echo chamber. You want to make sure that your messaging is landing with your audience and actually getting the impact that you know your learning deserves. And then step 5 of the loop, measuring impact and boosting value. We had a phenomenal episode with Nelson Sivalingham all about measuring impact. And yes, Nelson gave us a great 3-step approach with proof of knowledge, proof of skill, and proof of performance. But actually what we spoke about a lot in that session is, what does impact mean? How can we define impact in L&D? How can we actually go out and work out what does impact really mean in our organisation? Because like Nelson said, we keep getting asked to prove impact, but nobody's actually sat down and defined what it is. And I do think that is because in L&D, impact is a safe term. We work with a lot of different functions, a lot of different business units that have a lot of different goals and things that they're striving towards. So just saying boosting impact kind of makes it easy. We need to stop doing that. We need to work out what impact really, really means so that we can prove knowledge, skill, and performance. Without knowing what we're actually measuring, that's incredibly hard. Think about what matters for your business. Think back to step 2, that business alignment. What's the organisation doing? What are they striving for? What can you measure within your L&D team that proves that you're helping them reach that goal? That's what we're looking at here. But then don't just look at it and go, yep, done that. This is what we've done. We've got this metric. Goodbye. No. We want to think about how we can use that, how we can build upon it, and how we can improve it by taking those metrics and driving straight back into step one. What do those metrics tell us about our audience and the business that we're working within? Does it support our findings? Does it contradict our findings? People typically say one thing and do another. So what's your data telling you? Check in again with the business. It's been a while since the last time you did it. Are the goals still the same? Check your experience design again. Is it living up to what your audience want? What have the metrics told you about what they really want versus what you've designed? Rethink your campaigns because you can better answer the what's in it for me now, because you know your audience more deeply. And then you can measure value again. And you can see how the people impact loop is never ending. That's not meant to scare you or put you off. Instead, it's meant to give you some encouragement that no, we're not on a hamster's wheel anymore, but we are in a loop that keeps building, keeps gaining momentum, and keeps making more and more impact the more and more you go through the cycle. We want to be thinking about outcomes, not just action. People in the business and anyone outside of L&D does not care that you've launched 25 programs in the last 12 months. And I know that's what we do, and that's a lot of effort, and well done, I care. Well done. If you have done that and you're genuinely happy with each and every course, well done. But we need to be looking beyond that if we really want to prove the value we're bringing to the business and make that impact, whatever impact means to you. It's not enough anymore to just say, yep, we've done our job. We need to think beyond that if we want to go beyond being seen as the cost centre. Be seen as, oh, those people over there that will organise a team building day for me. We are a strategic function of the organisation. We can have a substantial impact on the business, but we need to be the ones to put the best foot forward and prove that to the wider organisation. So if you've been listening to this series of the podcast and thinking, I do some of that already, brilliant. I'm not saying that people are not doing any of this. I love that you're doing some of it. But what we now need to do is link it together and fill in the gaps. We do have a diagnostics tool that I will link in the show notes that will show you where your loop's currently sitting. If you fill out that diagnostics tool, you will get a free 30-minute consultancy session with myself or Ashley to really think through, what do you need to do next in your organisation? How can you bring the people impact loop to life in your organisation? How can you go from that content churn house to a real strategic function? Like Heather Burright said back in episode 2, I think it was, we're not content factories, we are change makers. And the people impact loop will help you get there. So like I said at the start of this episode, this does conclude series 2 of the Marketing for Learning podcast. We will be back after a short summer break, probably in September at some point, but don't hold me to that. But we will be back with some great new guests, some great new episodes, and a lot more learning for you all. So I'll see you there, guys. Bye.